All right, welcome back. This should be our last video, instructional video for the MS House. As last time, we spent some time adding in hidden lines, solid lines to represent the equipment and built-in equipment in our floor plan. Our goal on this last round of video is to put in room labels and some basic dimensions, okay, some basic exterior dimensions. So let's take a quick look at our example document. So here's our instructions where we're on part 4 effectively. Okay, we're going to be adding room labels and some dimensions around the outside. Okay, we can see here all doors and windows should be dimensioned to their center of the openings. And if we take a look at our example, we're looking at something along these lines. Now, this particular example does have some issues on it, okay? Part of the goal with learning how to do technical drawing is learning how to dimension properly. And if we were to zoom in, this bottom row, it is a pretty darn good example. It does have a couple little issues. Good rule of thumb, when you start on the left and we read to the right. So we start on the left-hand side and we read to the right. You'll also notice we have a couple of different levels of dimension, and that's important as we want to make sure that the spacing between dimensions in the object, or the space between dimensions themselves, okay, between the object or dimensions themselves, is consistent. You'll also notice that each row is effectively one horizontal line, and they're all horizontally aligned. Also, where we are dimensioning to the same location, we don't have two lines. Like in this example, we have one extension line coming out from the object, whereas over here on the right-hand side, this is a no-no right here where we're trying to avoid double lines. Why wouldn't we just make this 12 and 4.5 extend to the same location at the overall dimension there is? And you may also pay attention to the concept that the first row dimensions here is kind of where the centers of doors and windows are located. The second row here is kind of overall for room sizes almost. And then we have, in some cases, the overall dimension. Okay, so we'll probably do one side of our house, and we'll also talk about putting in basic text. Okay, text for room labels. You'll notice most of these labels are roughly centered in the room in which they are labeling, just again for clarity, and complexity only goes up from kind of this introductory example. So if we make our way back to AutoCAD, let's start with dimensions. I'm sorry, I don't want to start with dimensions. I'm going to start with text. And we can either place our text on the same layer as our dimensions, or we might have a text layer. Depending upon what the settings are, we can choose appropriately. I'm going to leave the dimensions on the dimension layer. I'm going to put text on the text layer, and I'm going to make the text LT, light, the one that I'm going to use, as hopefully it will not be too dark and bold. So you can see there's a couple dimensions on the inside here. I'm going to get rid of those because we didn't really need those. Those are left over from a previous activity. And when we put text in, we're going to go up here to where it says text, and notice it has a drop down, and there are a couple of options. And I believe we talked about text before, but I personally don't really like either of these. I just like to type in text, and you'll see that there's another version of text here. I'm old. I've been doing this for a while. I like this version primarily because of the interaction. So when I go into text, it basically says, where do you want to start your text? Well, I'm going to start my text right here. Okay. It then asks me for the height of my text. Again, some of the other text options allows you to do like a text window, and you can play with the settings inside of there. I like this one for its simplicity. So the height here, I can specify with my cursor, or I can type in a height. Let's say I do 1 foot. Okay, I do a 1 foot tall text. Then it wants to know the angle of the text. I think I want this horizontal, so I'm going to drag my cursor out in that direction. And now I'm left with the ability to type my text in. And in this case, all caps lock, I want this to be my kitchen. I type in my text, enter once, enter twice, and there is my text label. Okay. Once I have that text label placed, there's a grip that I can grab, and I can turn off ortho, and I can visually center that in a particular opening. Now, when it comes to labeling other rooms, I have a couple different ways I can go about that. I can certainly try another text command. I can certainly use the text type in version, or let's say I'm not lazy but maybe efficient. If I highlight this existing text and I copy it, Control C and paste it, you'll see it's attached to my cursor. And then I can go and place that different areas of my plan. I can double left click on it to edit it, and I can make this bedroom. So I don't hit shift, bedroom 1. And there is my label for that bedroom. Okay, so our room labels are really not overly complicated. The biggest challenge is getting the text to be the right size. And we'll see here in a second if our text is the right size when we go and do some of our basic dimensions. All right. So let's worry about trying to dimension right here the garage, right? We've got a garage door, we've got a secondary door. We might want to know where the inside wall is at. When I say inside wall, I mean this one here. And how would we do our dimensions? So I generally recommend, again, starting on the left and working your way right. If we were doing this side here, we would start down here. Think about rotating this object so this is legible. So we would start on the left and work our way to the right. So again, I'm on my text layer, so I want to first go to my dimension layer. Again, having things on different layers allows me to turn things on and off at will. If I use one layer for a bunch of things, I can't separate them. So again, there are suggestions on proper drawing technique, and I'm going to get in this drop down the linear dimension. And I know AutoCAD's got this super awesome dimension here, but I'm a little old school, and I like having a kind of less control or less automation that AutoCAD likes to bring in. So I'm going to use this linear dimension. And again, paying attention to my command prompt, where does the first extension line start? Well, generally it's where I'm going to start my dimension. Okay, I'm going to turn my ortho on, by the way. And it wants to know where my second dimension line extension, and again, we have object snap-on or OSnap. That's going to allow me to find the center of a door or window. So I'm going to left click there. You'll see here, I've got some text. Okay, and we haven't determined the space from our object. If we were doing this by hand and we were doing a highly technical drawing, we would have spacing that we would measure with. But here I just want to kind of get an eyeball, and I don't know, about there. So I kind of go by like, here's the height of my text, if you can see, and I'm going to kind of double that. Somewhere in there is usually probably a good space to be. And so there is my 6-foot dimension on my text. Okay. Now, I want another dimension here for the location of the center of this door. So I'm going to get a linear dimension, and some people will do this. Some people will do this dimension. And then it starts to get kind of busy. And again, I like to kind of work on the concept of levels of dimensioning. So I would suggest that we pick up where we left off, so same midpoint, because we're in the same room or the same garage here. So I'm going to start in the same spot, and I'm going to go from there to the center of this door or window. And then you'll see that I have, again, a dimension attached to my cursor, but we have to decide where to place this dimension. Now, a lot of people will kind of zoom in here and they'll eyeball this, right? I went, okay, that looks good. What I would suggest that you do is you use Object Snap, again, to our benefit, and there is an intersection point here where the dimension line coming here from the side and this extension line meet. And it's right in there, and if I use that and I left click, those two dimensions that I just put in here will be perfectly aligned. Okay. So then I would maybe do an overall dimension. So it does kind of depend on what you're doing here. Maybe I would dimension to the inside of the wall here. Maybe I would dimension to the outside of the wall, or on one side or the other. Maybe inside, outside, bad there. And here's my second level of dimension, right? So again, if this is my first level, maybe about same distance away, maybe a little bit closer than the spacing we see here. So something like that kind of looks good. And I'm just kind of eyeballing that. That's come from, years of experience, kind of actually measuring things out. And I'm not too worried about exact space. It becomes a little bit more of a concern as I rotate around our views. So for instance, if I go and I'm going to do this dimension to this window, okay, again, center of window from the edge of the house, and I'm going to try and eyeball, again, the space here, so it's very similar to the space that I have in the front view. I'm not going to worry about actual distances. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, and that looks pretty good right about there, and that's where I would place that dimension. So again, we want the space here, okay, this area, that distance, to be approximately the same as this distance. Okay. I can look at it and there are huge differences, like, hey, this one's way out here. Those don't look right. So again, we want them to be close. So if I continue here, I'm now making my way to my next room. So I will continue with a linear dimension from the same spot that my last dimension picked up. Okay. Some people might start here to the center. That might be okay. Gets a little kind of ugly inside of here, but if I do this, right, from there to the center of that window, I can still come over here and find the intersection point, and that will align this dimension with this dimension. And again, I will kind of continue on my way, same midpoint to midpoint, use that tool to align those two, and then I might want, again, another dimension here, let's say from that location to that location on the wall, and again, align those two. And I would make my way across the side of the house, dealing with those dimensions. Last but not least, I do need overall dimensions. So my last line of dimensions here probably could get by with doing an overall like you see there. And again, our goal is to dimension around the outside of the house and worry about any wall changes. So in this case, you just have a rectangle. If you have any interior walls touching exterior walls, kind of nice to know where those are located. It also gives us a general idea on the size of the room. I am not concerned with interior dimensions at this point in time on your projects. Okay. So there we go. That's part 4, adding in dimensions, doing dimensions nicely, and text. Now, if I was to look at this text certainly is bigger than this text down below. Let's take a look here. Okay. So it is quite possible that maybe 12 inches for the size of my text here maybe wasn't the greatest idea. Maybe I want that text to match the height of this text. So let's try text again. And this time I'm going to do, let's see, start point's going to be here. The height, I'm going to do 6 inches this time. Half as big. I'm going to go this direction, and then I'm going to do kitchen. And that text looks a lot more in line with the text for our dimensions. In fact, our dimension text is still smaller, but that's probably a little bit better size, 6-inch text instead of 12-inch text. All right, good luck. Feel free to ask questions in class if you have any. Hopefully that's enough to get you to have a pretty darn close to being a finished floor plan. Thanks for watching. See ya on the next series of videos.